Hi, so I'm Wilf from Team Brighter Glasgow, and we're here to talk to you about taking Open Glasgow to the next level. So NHS Scotland aims to improve the health of its population through delivery of its e-health strategy 2011 to 2017, which has 6 very high-level strategic aims. One of those aims, aim 4, is all about improving the health of the population with available data, improving the health of the population in Scotland as a whole. Achieving this is going to be really quite difficult, however. There have been so many recent high-publicised failures about where these kind of projects go wrong, specifically around trust and the perception of the user of how the NHS is using their own data. We're going to try and solve this by flowing patient data into reporting and self-management systems where we emphasise consent for the user and that it's their data. And we're going to deliver this through the implementation of a platform. We're not seeking to reinvent the wheel here. We're going to use something that's been done before. So I don't know if you're familiar with the Dallas project, but it's delivering assisted living lifestyles at scales. And one of their projects is something called iFocus, which is all about designing an interoperable architecture that will allow applications to start talking to each other so you can start flowing data about people around the ecosystem. So what we're actually proposing is this platform here. So you've got this ecosystem of Open Glasgow apps, some of which have perhaps been developed here today, and then a platform which starts linking them up, so you're actually getting meaningful data out of them. And so we're developing a number of components up here. We've got an API layer based on open standards, so anyone can come and talk to it. We've got some stuff around how you authenticate the components, so you know they're real. We're doing user authentication so that people can log on using like a social logon, or maybe something like My Account, which is just being rolled out across Scotland now. You need a subscription and consent management box in there as well. And you want a BI app so you can start taking intelligence out. You've then got an enterprise service bus layer, which is setting some rules around how the data moves between these boxes, how you're synchronizing different records, and how you're auditing the data. You then want some sort of personal health record store. Could be something like Indivo, could be something like Microsoft Health Vault. There are a few options of how you do this. And then you just have an event transfer log that's putting data into this data warehouse every time a user makes a change. Now, what I want to emphasize about this is that it's through talking about a specific use case. So, say you're a diabetic with type 2 diabetes, a condition which affects more than 50,000 people in Glasgow just on its own. And say you go and see your GP, and their main concern is, making sure you're okay and giving you some kind of tools which help you adhere to what can be quite a well-managed care regimen. So they want to make sure you take some exercise, that you take your insulin regularly, and that you know what your blood sugar levels are. So say they give you whatever prescription it is, and then they say, go and have a look at this app. This is really helpful. It'll help keep you on track, keep you healthy, stop you falling into diabetic coma and ending up in hospital, which is expensive, traumatic for the patient, not good. So the user goes home, says, okay, I'll look at this app, signs up to it, and in the sign-up process there's a bit where they say, yes, I'm going to consent to give my data to this system. And that means that you can start flowing data out, both to the GP and in personal data so they can monitor their patient group, and potentially anonymised data for reporting or big research projects. So the point to emphasise here is that it's the user's data. You make the user in charge of their data. It's up to them who they share it with, where it sits, and what's done with it. You make the consent explicit from the outset. Business model for this, if we surprisingly beat everyone else here and take home the 20K, we're going to use that to run that engagement sessions with NHS Greater Glasgow and Clyde. It'll be about engaging with stakeholders, finding out the needs of the e-health team leads, the needs of the users themselves, and the needs of the GPs. After we've done that, we think we can build a minimum viable proof of concept quite cheaply. That would have to be funding, again, from NHS Greater Glasgow and Clyde. And we think we can actually get a sustainable business model out of this, because if you're starting to have GPs pointing users towards apps, you're starting to put a real incentive on the app developers to make that data available and make it part of the ecosystem. And we think that demonstrates a scalable business model that doesn't rely on NHS funding. In terms of competition, I think it's actually more about collaborative partnerships. And so there are 2 really great projects going on in Scotland at the moment I think this should link into. One is Spire, which is all about taking data out of GP systems and using it for research. And one is Share, which is all about users signing up provide their data. So I think we can work with these people, and I'd like to say thank you very much for listening. Brighter Glasgow.
So, thank you very much for that. Judges, over to you. Any questions?
So did you build anything over the weekend?
No, we didn't. So we're just seeking to define the architecture at this stage, but we haven't built a product as yet.
When you gave the example, you talked about, take more exercise. Is there room to actually say where, what facilities might be in the area to take the exercise?
Absolutely. So if we just go back to this slide here, the point is that there are loads of great apps doing that already. So let's not build another self-care management app. So let's say the GP says, this is the self-care management app you use, and that has that functionality in it. Let's use that data and pull it in and do intelligent stuff with it. Let's not go away and build more apps.
Hi, Rolf. How would you get the GPs online to use this?
That's a tricky stakeholder group to engage with. What you want to try and do, I think, is make it as easy as possible for them. You want to minimize the change they have to make in terms of their day-to-day interaction with their patients. And you have to hope and assume they will want the health of their patients to be better overall.
And did you speak to any GPs?
I have done for different projects, not for this.
All right.
What are the benefits that you see for the NHS out of this? Why would they be interested in this?
So we do know that patient-reported data is going to be very, very useful in terms of getting large volumes of data about specific conditions from users. And you can start doing all sorts of clever analytics on that in terms of understanding where you've got people who are sickest, why they might be sickest. And one of the things you can start doing with our model is if you have users with multiple conditions, so multiple comorbidities, you can start to link that data up if the user's given it consent to use it, and then you're getting richer data sets than you would from just one standalone application.
What sort of level of referral fees do you think you will need to make the project sustainable?
So if we say there are 50,000 diabetic sufferers in NHS Greater Glasgow and Clyde, and if we say that roughly 70% of them have access to technology which they can use for this kind of service, and let's say that each time a GP refers them to an app, they get £1 for doing so, well, Brighter Glasgow and Open Glasgow get £1 for doing so, then you've got your £50,000 from your one use case and one app. And I think that does demonstrate you could scale it with a population as large and diverse as Glasgow and multiple apps.
From my point of view as a researcher, the interest is obviously in the data and what we as researchers can learn about these patients. Is there not a conflict, though, between telling the patients it's their data and then having this huge data set that people then can mine and look?
Not at all, as long as you're upfront about the consent and how you're going to use the data. So if you tell the user, do you want to share your data in an anonymised form with researchers, and they say yes, and you've explained that well, then that's all you need to do.
Thank you, Brighter Glasgow.
Thank you.